Yeah, you can see there. So we're talking about cognitive biases, and we're also gonna talk a little bit more about experimental economics, okay? So before we do that, let's just check what we have understood so far, okay? What we have done so far, first, we talked about persuasion, and we discussed how that is not the purpose of behavior economics, ok? Tem gente vendendo cursos de economia comportamental para ensinar as pessoas a persuadirem o consumo. Tem gente desonesta fazendo isso, fazendo uso de uma ferramenta para uma função que não foi aquela que ela foi criada. That's not the purpose of behavior economics. What we have in behavior economics is this idea that we want to understand people's behavior, and as much as we can, we want to help them out in making better decisions, okay? All right. So I showed you the 6 principles of persuasion, that book from, what's the name of this? Cialdini, and that's not behavior economics, okay? Then we talked about bounded rationality. We have just reviewed this idea of the dual system, system 1 and system 2, as a model, as a simple explanation for the very much complex process in our brains, but that is a good, simple explanation, okay? It's a model. And we had our first examples of cognitive biases, right? So now let's go ahead and give you a definition of cognitive biases. Okay? What are cognitive biases? O que são esses viés cognitivos? So you have a description there. Tendencies or patterns of systematic errors, deviations from rationality. São tendências ou padrões de erros sistemáticos que acontecem sempre e que constituem desvios de uma racionalidade pura. All right, so cognitive biases, there are a lot of them, and I'm going to show you many of them here, but I'm going to give you a list, and it looks like an infinite list. Okay, it's a very large number of ways that our brains predictably tend to make mistakes. Tá? Eu vou mostrar para vocês que tem uma lista realmente muito grande de maneiras como o nosso cérebro previsivelmente tende a cometer erros, tá? Mesmo que a gente saiba, a gente ainda assim vai cometer erros, tá? I have to give you this alert, okay? Cognitive biases, they are not cultural aspects of choice making, even though cultures may strengthen or weaken them, okay? But they are innate. They are part of the human condition, okay? Então, vieses cognitivos são partes da experiência humana, não são aspectos culturais. E muitas vezes a gente acha que são, a gente confunde questões culturais com vieses cognitivos, tá? Nós vamos tentar ser cuidadosos nisso. Então, a minha frase aqui está dizendo assim: vieses cognitivos não são aspectos culturais da tomada de decisão. Muito embora as culturas possam fortalecer ou enfraquecer esses vieses cognitivos. All right. So, how can we know that we are subject to cognitive biases? Well, let me just give you a few examples of everyday life. Well, sometimes people only choose the news and stories that confirm their opinions. Some people will only watch Jornal Nacional. Some other people will only watch Jovem Pan. Some other people will never watch Globo News. Why is that so? Well, we don't want to hear things that we don't agree. We want to confirm our opinions. We want people to say exactly what we think. And that's a problem, because that's not a good way to form your opinion. In order to form our opinions, we should listen to different points of view, right? Well, I'm going to come back to that point later, okay? But another sign of cognitive biases is when we attribute some other people's success to luck. Quando a gente faz alguma coisa que dá certo, a gente fica todo orgulhoso, se sente bem e tal. Quando uma outra pessoa, principalmente se a gente não gosta, faz alguma coisa e dá certo, a gente fala, não, deu sorte. Well, come on. It's not like this, right? So we blame other people from our mistakes. We assume that we are always correct. We assume that other people think just like us. All of those are signs that we are making these silly, predictable mistakes in the form we evaluate things and we many times make decisions. Now, you may look at this and say, come on, Luis, how have people studied that? Como é que as pessoas estudaram esses viés cognitivos? Será que era só uma opinião? Then you may say, no, wait. This is science. We are talking about like a serious procedure here. We are talking about psychology. So in psychology, you also will be careful. You will also be careful on how you construct your exams, your tests, and you're going to try to document your theories as much as you can, right? So, even in psychology, even in behavior economics, even in social science, we tend to rely on experiments. And we can do that in behavior economics, ok? Então, em algum momento, quando a gente está começando a aprender ciências sociais, alguém diz para nós assim, ah, não, nas ciências sociais você não conduz experimentos. Você não poderia colocar uma pessoa e tratá-la como se fosse um ratinho de laboratório e tal. Well, yeah, you cannot do that, but actually, you can develop very interesting experiments. I'm going to give you one fascinating example, okay, guys? So let me get out of here of this page. Let me just look at your faces. I want you guys to look at this, okay? Let me give you an example of this very interesting experiment in behavior economics, okay? Para quem às vezes está perdendo uma parte ou outra da minha fala, eu vou dar agora um exemplo muito, muito interessante de experimento na economia comportamental. All right, so it goes like this, okay? You are in the university, and then you're just walking down towards your class or something like that. And then you see this sign saying, oh, come over here, participate in our experiment, and you're going to make $10. Imagine que você estivesse andando lá pelo campus na Rural, e aí tem um sinal dizendo assim, uma placa dizendo, vem aqui, participe do nosso experimento de economia comportamental, e todo mundo que participar ganha $10. Say, oh, yeah, great, yeah, I'm going to participate. I can make $10, yeah, I'm going to go there. Okay, right. So when you get in the building, there will be some people in lab coats or something like that to show like really experienced, scientists or something like that. And then the person will tell you, oh, thanks for participating. The experiment is very simple. You're going to get in this class. We're going to give you a number. We're going to tell you a number. And you have to memorize it. Then you're going to walk down the aisle all the way to the back of the building. And there will be another room. You will get in and you're going to tell the number. That's it. Então, o cara vira e fala assim, ah, legal, obrigado por participar do nosso experimento aqui, você vai ganhar $10 por participar. É simples. Você vai entrar aqui nessa sala, alguém vai te dizer um número. E aí, tu vai memorizar esse número, vai andar todo o corredor, chegar lá no final do prédio, entrar na última sala e vai dizer o número que você memorizou. Só isso. And the guy say, wow, that's the easiest 10 bucks I made in my entire life. É os 10 reais mais fáceis de ganhar que eu já tive na minha vida. All right, but then notice that this experiment sometimes will involve small numbers. So you get in the room and people will tell you 35. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you just have to memorize 35. And then you memorize 35. You walk down the aisle and back there you come and say 35. Uh-huh. But for some people, the number will be 216. For some other people will be 55,319. And for some other people, you're going to have like 1,319,762. So you see, you can give people small numbers or large numbers to memorize. But it's still, you may look at this and say, come on, Luis, this is a silly test. I can memorize a 6-digit number. Então, muita gente pode falar assim, não, esse teste ainda parece bobo. Se eu vou conseguir memorizar um número de 5, de 3 dígitos e tal, parece fácil, legal, tal. Aha! But that's not the experiment. You think initially that the experiment is about memory. But no. There is something unsuspected happening. It goes like this. When you leave the first room and you are midway to the next room, accidentally, there will be someone pushing a cart. And over the cart, you see some food. Então, no meio do caminho, na hora que você sair da primeira sala, tentando memorizar o número lá, no meio do caminho vai passar alguém por você empurrando um carrinho. E nesse carrinho vai ter comida. You have basically two choices, okay? On one hand, you have like regular crackers. No butter, no chocolate, nothing. Just crackers. Dry crackers. And on the other hand, you have this beautiful cake with chocolate coming out of it, and just the perfect cake, ok? Então, a pessoa vai estar passando assim no caminho e vai vir uma menina empurrando o carrinho e falar assim, olha, por participar aqui do nosso experimento também você pode escolher um lanchinho. Você prefere o quê? 2 ou 3 bolachas secas? Ou você vai querer essa maravilhosa torta de chocolate com cobertura? All right. Some of you may be already saying, oh, I want the cake. But that's not the point. What the experiment is actually testing is how much self-control you tend to exhibit if you are under stress. You see, because if you have to memorize a large number, I mean, it's not like the end of the world, but you are kind of tense, right? You are under a little bit of stress. E os caras estão testando, na verdade, é isso. Se eu aumento o tamanho do número que a pessoa vai ter que memorizar, eu coloco a cabecinha daquela pessoa em um nível de estresse maior. E aí eu quero saber o quanto mais provável, diante do estresse, quanto mais provável essa pessoa está a se conceder a licença de cair de cara na torta de chocolate. A pessoa pode estar olhando assim, pensando, o verão está chegando, não posso engordar muito, mas se a pessoa está muito tensa, alguém chega com aquela torta de chocolate perfeita, é muito difícil de segurar, né? All right, so this is like a real experiment. They actually ran this experiment, and the result was fascinating. It turns out that as you increase the number of digits that people are supposed to memorize, the likelihood of they choosing the cake is much, much higher. So it is true that you make poorer food choices when you are under stress. Então, os caras testaram e provaram que a gente tende a fazer escolhas de comida menos saudáveis quando a gente está sob estresse. Quando a pessoa não estava sob estresse, ela tinha maior capacidade de resistir. Aí você fala assim, não, mas quem é que vai resistir a uma torta de chocolate? Muita gente. Só que você não sabe quem é. Então está todo mundo misturado ali. Tem gente com facilidade para resistir, tem gente com dificuldade para resistir. Então, você tem que ter os dois tipos de pessoas nos dois grupos. Marcos is making a comment here. Is that also about the power of dopamine, like a brain superstimulation? Well, not really, Marcos. Here is not about the effect of what you eat. Here is about how much self-control in general you can exercise and how much of that you lose if you are under stress. Now, this is a very important message, guys. Think about this. As pessoas sob estresse, elas tendem a comer mais porcaria. Você fala assim, mas isso é óbvio. Não, não é óbvio. Não é óbvio. Então, se uma pessoa está tentando emagrecer, sabe o que ela devia primeiro fazer? Aprender a meditar. Dormir melhor. Se distanciar de gente negativa. Tentar descansar com mais disciplina no seu descanso, desligar o celular quando for 9, 10 da noite, não ficar olhando para o celular madrugada dentro. You see? If you want to eat healthier, you have to watch for your level of stress. Not only counting calories, you know? O segredo para emagrecer pode não estar tão na contagem de calorias e muito mais na sua capacidade de controlar o seu nível de estresse. Isn't it cool? Come on. Just tell me. I think this is one of the most interesting experiments I've seen in behavioral economics ever. All right? But then again, let me show you some more types of experiments, okay? So the first one you have is lab experiments, just like the one I told you, okay? This experiment I just told you, it is an example of lab experiments. Why is that so? Because individuals are stimulated or asked to perform relatively simple tasks with clearly observable evidences of their choices and behaviors. Então, os indivíduos são estimulados ou solicitados a realizarem tarefas relativamente simples, com evidências muito claramente observáveis das suas escolhas, do seu comportamento. Você consegue medir, consegue calcular, consegue observar com clareza o que está acontecendo. Well, those tend to be very nice, but you have also to be aware that they run some risks too, okay? The loss of spontaneity, the artificial behaviors, if you choose non-representative samples. Now, this is a big problem in behavior economics, okay? Uma grande parte dos experimentos de economia comportamental são realizados por estudantes de universidade. Mas quem disse que estudante de universidade é uma amostra representativa de toda a população? Não é. Tem gente muito diferente de estudantes universitários. Is there someone with the mic open who would like to ask a question? Let me see if I see here. I think it's Maeli. It was accidental, is it, Maeli? Or you want to ask a question? Acho que foi acidental, né? Okay, it's all right. Don't worry, it's all right. Experimentos de laboratório eles podem perder a espontaneidade, podem acabar capturando comportamentos artificiais. A gente tem o risco de lidar com amostras que não sejam representativas da população, e aí a gente não pode fazer afirmativas sobre toda a população. Most of all, in lab experiments, we have to be very, 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 very careful with the ethics, okay? Please pay attention to this, guys. In behavior economics, we have to be extremely careful with ethical concerns, ok? A gente jamais deve submeter uma pessoa a qualquer tipo de experimento que ela não tenha sido convidada livremente a participar, que não seja explicado para ela o que vai acontecer e que tenha praticamente zero de chance dela ter qualquer forma de sofrimento. All right? So, yeah, we have to be very, very careful in terms of ethics. One example of this is when people make experiments on how to present the labels of food, especially in case of meat. Então, lá nos Estados Unidos, eles fizeram um experimento muito interessante que colocavam o pacotinho de carne moída e dizia assim, 10% de gordura. Aí colocavam um outro pacotinho do lado dizendo assim, 90% livre de gordura. Well, the information is the same, right? No, 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 no. The way you present the information, it matters, okay? So if you present people like this is 10% fat and this is 90% fat-free, it matters, you see? If you emphasize that 90% has no fat, people tend to accept it as more healthy, as healthier, even though it is the same information. All right, so this is another example of lab experiment. We also have field experiments. Okay, so those are when we have like whole communities doing something, and then you somehow manage to collect data and understand exactly how they behave. So let me give you an example of this. And later this week, I'm going to send you a video so you guys can watch this thing here. Oh. Randomized controlled trials performed by this French lady here, Esther Duflo. Pessoal, essa Esther Duflo é aquela que escreveu A Economia dos Pobres, A Economia da Pobreza. Ela lida com políticas de combater a pobreza. E ela fala assim, eu preciso descobrir qual que é a forma mais eficiente de combater a pobreza. Se você me der $100 mil, eu tenho que falar assim, para cada dólar que você me doou, qual a alternativa de políticas públicas foi capaz de gerar um maior resultado? So, this is her thing, okay? To try and identify which one is the best way to spend money to fight poverty. All right, so just to give you an example of this, in this TED Talk, and I'm going to send you the video, she explains one experiment that they had, if I'm not mistaken, in Kenya, okay? And it went like this. Instead of having vaccine posts open throughout the year and trying hard to get people to take their kids so they would be vaccinated, they would say something like this. If you bring your child in January, you're going to get 1 kilo of beans or something. Então eles falam assim, em vez de manter o posto de vacinação aberto o ano inteiro, eles falam assim, campanha. Se você trouxer seus filhos e suas filhas para vacinar em janeiro, toda mãe que vier vai ganhar 1 quilo de feijão, 1 quilo de lentilha, 1 quilo de algum alimento. All right, so some people may look at this and say, Oh, come on, Luis, you're bribing people to be vaccinated. This is not ethical. Alguém pode questionar esse experimento e falar assim, poxa, Luiz, você tá corrompendo, você está, como é que se diz? É chantageando, não? Quando você dá dinheiro para conseguir alguma coisa? Subornando, essa é que é a palavra, Marcos, obrigado. Você está subornando a pessoa para vacinar os seus filhos. But then, Esther will tell you, come on, I'm not bribing anyone, it's just 1 kilo of food. This will not change anyone's life. I mean, I'm just giving people the reason to act now. It is not like I'm changing people's lives or something like that. Então, ela argumenta que esse tipo de experimento não era suborno, ela estava só dando às pessoas uma razão para agirem imediatamente e não procrastinarem. And it turns out that it worked. As they offered this 1 kilo of food, they got to vaccinate more people and they got to spend less money with the vaccination campaign. So, eles não precisaram ficar o ano inteiro com o posto de vacinação aberto. Eles conseguiram atingir a meta de vacinação, economizando dinheiro, mesmo tendo que comprar toda a comida. Então, assim, gastaram menos e tiveram melhor resultado. All right, so this is a field experiment. One more time, in order to perform a field experiment, you have to be authorized to do so, okay? So it's not like, oh, come on, I had an idea, I'm going to start doing it, okay? Especially when you're dealing with vulnerable populations, we have to be extremely, extremely careful, and we have to work according to the law, okay? It's not like I had an idea, I'm just going to go there and start performing experiments on people, okay? Please pay attention to this, guys. This is a very big deal, okay? All right. The third kind of experiment is what we call natural experiments. It's just like when something happens and you have two groups. One group is affected, one is not affected. So, for example, if you have two cities, they are nearby, they are equally wealthy, they have same culture, and one of them changes the law for something, ok? Então imagine assim, duas cidades muito próximas uma da outra, com o mesmo nível de renda, com o mesmo perfil de moradores e tal, aí uma delas muda uma lei. Well, this is an experiment. You can check, because now you can see how people behave under a new law and how people behave with the old norms, ok? Então, às vezes, você tem experimentos naturais que acontecem quando você muda uma lei, e aí duas populações, uma afetada pela mudança, a outra não afetada, você pode ir lá e fazer coleta de dados e identificar o que foi o efeito provocado por aquela mudança, porque você tem um grupo de controle. Você sabe o que teria acontecido se a lei não tivesse mudado. All right. One example of this is two states in the United States, New Jersey and Pennsylvania. They are right next to each other. And in one case, they changed the law for car insurance. And basically, in one of the states, you had a different sort of contract in which you could sign an option refusing to your right to sue. Então, deixa eu explicar isso em português porque é uma coisa mais técnica. Então, são dois estados nos Estados Unidos. Um deles mudou uma regra sobre os contratos de seguro de automóveis, permitindo que as companhias de seguro colocassem uma cláusula dizendo assim, eu marco essa opção aqui e aí eu abro mão do meu direito de processar a companhia de seguro, a não ser que ela tenha flagrantemente violado uma condição do contrato. Então, diminui a chance de um cliente de seguro processar a companhia. Não quer dizer que elimina, tá? Mas diminui. And because of that, the premium was much lower. Então, se você aceitava essa opção, aí você tinha que pagar menos pelo seguro de automóvel. So, it was like an option. But in one of the states, they didn't have that option. Just in the other state. So, these guys came out and said, let's study, let's check how people reacted to this new law, okay? So this is a natural experiment in terms that it was not planned as an experiment. It just came up, and some clever scientists went there and said, oh, yeah, we want to study this. Let me stop here and ask you, I'm almost over for tonight, guys, but let me ask you if you have a question. Alguém tem alguma pergunta ou tá indo bem? I can see that we have only 24 people in the room tonight. That's not so good because I think we have like 40 people in this class. And so if it's only 29 people showing up, well, it may be the case that many people have already given up. I hope not, but yeah, it is possible. Alguém tem alguma pergunta? A Clara está dizendo que está tudo ok. Please raise your hand if it's all fine and I can proceed. Levanta a mãozinha aí, por favor, gente, se vocês estão entendendo bem e eu posso seguir adiante. All right. Good. Thanks, Vitória, Clara, Marcos, Maeli, Diego, Paulo. Thank you so much, guys. All right. So, we are almost over, okay? We are not going to be much further. But let me tell you this, okay? In our behavioral economics toolbox, we are going to be talking about these things, okay? We're going to be talking about heuristics and biases. We're going to be talking about nudges, which is like pequenos empurrõezinhos para ajudar as pessoas a fazerem boas decisões. We're going to be talking about mind space, which is the way we develop public policies. And we are going to start by showing you how large a number of cognitive biases are there, okay? Take a look at this. Nessa foto aí, gente, tem 170, eu acho que 168 vieses cognitivos diferentes, que são maneiras documentadas pelas quais a nossa mente tende a cometer erros. Eles são previsíveis. When I say that those are documented, I mean someone has ran experiments with people and have shown that those are true, okay? That those happen. Então, são 168 exemplos de vieses cognitivos que foram documentados no sentido de alguém fazer experimento com dezenas, centenas de pessoas e mostrar que aquilo ali de fato acontece, publicar um artigo numa revista científica e, algumas vezes, nomear, denominar um novo viés cognitivo. Now, we can categorize those in 4 groups. The first group goes like this. We make all of those mistakes when we have to deal with too much information. Então, tem um monte de maneiras como a gente acaba cometendo erros previsíveis quando tem mais informação do que a gente precisa, tá? The second group are all of those ways we make mistakes when, even if we have information, we have difficulty associating meaning to that information. Então, o segundo grupo são todas as maneiras como a gente comete erros, mesmo tendo informação, mas a gente tem dificuldade de interpretar a informação. Okay? So, we have this not enough meaning. Pouco significado. Then there is the third group. It's always when we had to need we have the need to act fast, well, we make many mistakes. Quando a gente tem que agir rapidamente, a gente está muito inclinado a cometer também uma série de outros erros. And finally, when we have to rely on our memories. It turns out that, unfortunately, our memories are not as great as we think they are, ok? Então, gente, sem querer dar uma má notícia para vocês, mas a verdade é que a nossa memória não é assim tão precisa igual a gente gostaria que fosse, tá? Let me give you one example of this, okay? I'm going to take this one here. This is pick and rule. If I wanted to translate this cognitive bias here, I would say a regra do pico e do final. So let me explain to you what this is. Suppose I ask you about your last vacation, okay? Suppose I look at someone here, let's say Marcos, Gabriela, and then I ask you, hey, Gabriela, how was your last vacation? Gabriela may say, oh, I don't even remember. It was so long ago. I'm just kidding. But then she may say, yeah, it was fine. And then suppose I tell Gabriela like this. Okay, now tell me why you think it is fine. Se eu perguntar para Gabriela por que ela acha que as últimas férias dela foram boas, tem uma grande probabilidade de ela mencionar duas coisas. Um ponto que foi pico, foi o auge das férias dela, e ela também deve citar como que terminou. Se uma pessoa, ao ter uma experiência no passado, ela se lembra de um momento de ápice, de pico bom, e se aquela experiência terminou bem, she will forever remember that experience as a positive one. On the other hand, if the peak condition was a negative one, let's suppose that Gabriela went to a hotel. She spent like 10 days in a good hotel. It was all fine. But there was this one day that the hotel was on fire. She had to leave the room in panic. There was smoke all everywhere, and she was afraid. Now, when she remembers that experiment, she's going to say, oh, it was a nightmare. She's going to drop all other 9 days she was in the hotel, and it was great. And she will only remember the terrible day of that smoke. You see? Então, a maneira como a gente forma memórias é muito influenciada pelo momento mais agudo daquela experiência e por como ela termina. Se essas duas coisas forem boas, a memória vai ser associada com uma memória boa. Se essas duas coisas forem ruins, não importa que a maior parte do tempo a experiência tenha sido boa. As pessoas vão associar aquilo a uma coisa ruim. So this is like a mistake if you want to evaluate from a rational perspective, right? If I were to ask from a rational perspective, Gabriela would have to tell me, no, this vacation was 90% good, but 10% really bad. That's how she would need to express. And it turns out that that's not how Gabriela would speak to me. She would say, oh, no, that was a nightmare. It was horrible. See, the whole experience will be somehow compromised by that event, okay? Vinicius, you have your hands up. You want to ask a question, or is this just like the last question I asked? Vinícius está com a mãozinha levantada ali. Eu não sei se ele quer fazer uma pergunta ou se é da última vez que eu pedi para levantarem a mão. Vinícius? Well, I will just proceed. If you want, please open up your mic or type something here in the chat box, okay? All right. So let's finish. Let me just tell you these 3 last points of the night, okay? I'm telling you 3 cognitive bias. First one is called ambiguity effect, the tendency to avoid options for which missing information makes the probability seem unknown. Então, efeito ambiguidade. Se tem várias opções, uma delas tem informação difícil de interpretar, a gente não escolhe ela. A gente fala, não sei se aquilo ali vai ser bom, se vai ser ruim, está difícil de associar uma probabilidade. We tend to avoid those options, ok? Efeito ambiguidade. A gente procura opções que sejam simples. Mesmo opções que são melhores, mas se elas forem complexas, a gente tende a correr delas. And that's bad news. We can make very bad mistakes because of that. But then, the second one, attentional bias. Oh, this is so important, guys. Please look at this. The tendency of our perception to be affected by our recurring thoughts. A tendência de que a nossa percepção da realidade seja afetada pelos nossos pensamentos mais recorrentes. Now, look at this. This is very, very important. Some people have horrible lives because they only think negative stuff. They just watch terrible TV shows about violence, about crimes. So they keep those things in their minds all the time. And when they look at reality, that's all they see are bad things. Então, olha só, gente, que coisa perigosa. A nossa percepção da realidade, ela é enviesada pelos nossos pensamentos mais recorrentes. Se a gente não cuidar da qualidade da nossa vida mental, a gente olha para o mundo e só vê desgraça. Literalmente. All right, so this is a very important stuff. Why is that important? Well, think about someone that is in Gaza right now. Someone that overcame a war. Someone who has been through a difficult trauma. So people who go through these difficult moments in life, we need to help them to look at good things in their lives, you know? Se uma pessoa viveu um trauma de família, se a pessoa sobreviveu a uma guerra, se a pessoa sobreviveu a um acidente, a gente precisa ajudar essas pessoas a olharem para as coisas boas da vida, porque se elas só ficarem pensando no negativo, elas só vão ver a parte negativa da realidade. So, yeah, this is very important piece of knowledge. And the third one, bandwagon effect. The tendency to do or believe things because many other people do or believe the same. Então, aqui a gente está falando efeito manada. In Portuguese, we would translate that to efeito manada. O que está todo mundo fazendo, a gente vai lá e faz de novo. O que todo mundo acredita, a gente também acredita. All right. So, just to check here, the first one, you see, the first picture, you see every single person is in one of the bus stops. The other one is by himself in the single bus stop that says bus. It's very hard to protect your opinion. We tend to follow other people's opinion all the time, and we have to look at this, okay? We have to be careful with this. The second thing here, the second picture here, it tells you how hard it is to make a choice when the options seem ambiguous. Here, the plaque is saying you only are supposed to turn right, you only are supposed to go through, and you only are supposed to go left. So it's impossible to make that decision. And in this final picture here, check out this guy, all he thinks about is taxes, stress, crisis, problem, fear. If all he thinks are bad things, well, it turns out that he is in risk of only seeing the bad things in life. His perception of reality ends up biased. All right. I think this is enough for tonight. What you guys think?